Good afternoon, good people. This is your host, Calvin Anderson, for the Check In with podcast. Season two, just moving ever so swiftly. We've had some amazing guests come on. And today we actually have our first joint podcast with an organization that are not only compassionate about what they do, but just in terms of like the grace they carry. And speaking to them the other day, you could hear just their focus on making mental health really something that is a staple in people's lives and the awareness of, how people should be with it and how they should have the grace to really occupy that space and really look after themselves. So when you hear these ladies speak today about the organization, what the organization does, yeah, you're going to understand why they had to come on today. So Across the Border is a community interest company dedicated to supporting immigrants as they navigate the challenges of settling into new communities. They work to break down barriers and create safe spaces where immigrants can access resources, build connections, and thrive. Through advocacy, education, and direct support, ATB empowers individuals to embrace their identity, overcome systemic challenges, and find belonging. Ladies and gentlemen, please give, not even just a warm welcome. You might as well just stand up and give them a round of applause, honestly, because they are amazing. Give an amazing round of applause to Mawada, Mohamed, and Meyys Hussein from Across the Border. Ladies, how are you?
All good, all good. Woohoo! Super excited to be here.
Thank you for
Ama-
the introduction. That was fantastic.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
amazing.
anytime, anytime. Ladies, I guess the first kind of thing I want to go into is what made and what was it that you guys came together and said, hey, we have a common interest, we have a common goal. Let's create this amazing organization. What was it? What sparked that?
Um, okay, I'll probably talk about it from my perspective, but I think obviously me and Mawada have known each other for a little while now.
Not a little anymore.
True. I mean, even if anyone asks me who do you live with, I just tell them my sisters. I just don't like even like bother explaining anything at this point. But me and Mawada have known each other for a while, and my co-founder is someone who I've met recently, but it's just felt that we've known each other for a long time as well. And that's because of our shared experiences when it comes to having, I guess, moved around a lot and experienced being a migrant in different countries, I guess. And when it comes to the work and why we started ATB, I feel like it was a shared understanding of what being an immigrant is in a country where the political sort of like avenues comes in a very harsh way, and it's very Loki's dehumanizes migrants and immigrants,
Yeah.
especially from certain. And then there's the reason why we came with the pillars that we have, for example, like the lotus of gender, lily of ages, and also the rose of race, is because for us, those are the three pillars that we saw that immigrants are discriminated against by. So by their race, by their age, and also by their gender. And it was just, it was a night after we were volunteering in another charity, and we sat down and we just spoke about it, and ideas were flying, names are flying, and everything happened really quickly. And everything from there, we did face a little bit of challenges when it comes to creating it, but then everything was running surprisingly smoothly, that it felt like the universe was telling us, oh, yeah, that's exactly what was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
um so yeah, I guess that's how it basically started.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Mohammed.
It was just um it was just a weird night. We were just talking about like a few issues that we were facing, and we came into like a common ground that okay, we're all coming from immigrant backgrounds. We're all facing the same issues. We can relate on so many levels. And the third person who's also the co-founder of ATB. She unfortunately can't be here, but her name is Edmund. She's an amazing, lovely. So yeah, I've known her like for a few months. Even Mace, she's known her a bit longer than I have, but it felt like we just knew each other for decades, which is crazy. And I think because we could relate so much, we just developed this weird idea of like starting our own charity or our own business. So yeah, this is how it kind of started. And I think the main focus point of across the border is to basically try and recognize these issues and these struggles that immigrants are trying to face. I feel like it's not just legal or political or financial barriers, but it's also like mental health, mental well-being, identity, social inclusion. All of these things are struggles that immigrants face, and it's not very much talked about by the outside world, let alone immigrants themselves. And I feel like it's due to the fact that it's quote unquote taboo to be talking about these topics in immigrant households. And we just want to like shine light on these. And like Mace already mentioned, the three pillars are basically our focus points of the CIC, which is race, age, and gender. And there's so many issues surrounding that, which we're trying to combat. Basically, our mission at ATB is to try and create a safe space for immigrants and migrants in general, and also to create community driven solutions to them, and also advocate for like the efforts that like that are missed, that immigrants put in when moving to a new country and when trying to build a life of their own. So this is kind of like what we're working towards, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And I think that's such a key thing that is not really mentioned. And even your focus in terms of that being on immigrants and making sure that they have the access. I think that is so powerful, ladies. So I commend you on that. Mace, just to echo what you spoke about before in terms of the three pillars, can you take us deeper into each one individually so we can understand better?
Yeah, of course. So basically, with the three pillars are the first one would be is just they were the pillars that I think we spoke about in from our own experiences when it comes to what we are mostly passionate about when it came to creating ATB. And then we realized that ATB did not have to be about like, oh, gender inequality only, or about like race issues, or only about, age discrimination. We thought that there's three pillars that we're very passionate about, and then that the three of us can sort of like take leadership on them.
Yeah.
uh, so basically, the Rose of Race addresses racial discrimination and systematic barriers that impacts the mental well-being of immigrants. And then when it comes to Lily of Age, it recognizes the mental health challenges faced by both younger and older migrants in adapting to any society. And then Lotus of Gender is basically exploring the intersections of migration and gender, and it highlights a unique struggle that they face by individual navigating gender-based expectations and inequalities, and also like gender-based violence, and all of those things that usually are very lost the word
Yeah, very hard to
navigate.
try and overcome in a sense. But yeah, those are the main pillars.
Okay. Before I go into my next question, why the symbolism of a flower for each one?
Very good question. um I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was so random. But I think we tried to like find we were brainstorming a lot. So this wasn't like our final idea. We even brainstormed with like raindrops and umbrellas at one point, which sounds very ridiculous now, but at the time we thought it was amazing and really creative. But I think the flower symbol was kind of made the most sense because each flower that we chose for each pillar kind of resembles a story. So, for example, for my pillar, and I'm sure Mace can speak about hers, like mine is the rose, and it's specifically the black rose. Now, the black rose is not a very naturally occurring kind of flower, but it's very rare. And so the way I kind of related it was I just okay, so My favorite kind of rose is the black rose. And it's just because I haven't seen a naturally black rose, and black roses are in nature, they're not truly black. They're actually like a dark maroon kind of color. And I read somewhere that there's a black rose field in like the south of Turkey, which I really wanted to go to. And ever since, everyone asks me, "Oh, what's my favorite flower?" I'm like, I'll try and see if I can find a natural black rose. That's my favorite. And because it's so rare, I feel like I've kind of connected it with how rare it is for people to, or like how common it is rather for people to dismiss race and discrimination in day to day life. And it's very rare for someone to call out racism because a lot of the times it's just brushed and swept under the rug, and it's so normalized that people have forgotten how mistreated they get. And when I talk about people, I also mean specifically like migrants, how mistreated they get because of their racial background. Um, how they develop a sense of imposter syndrome. So, a lot of the times, like I can only speak about like myself personally, and I know a few friends can relate to this as well. In terms of imposter syndrome, like I always feel like I'm not good enough. I feel like I can't reach the level of like my other fellow white colleagues, let's say, and so on and so forth. And I feel like because these are so swept under the rug and it's so rare for us to talk about these topics publicly and address them on our day-to-day life. I think the same way I can look at this, I can also resemble it with like the black rose and how rare it is to be seen around in the day-to-day life. So I think that's how like I came about that. And I think the concept of flowers kind of just flourished naturally onto us. And so each pillar has its own flower, and each flower has its own story.
Amazing. I really love that. Mawada. I'm gonna have to go do my research on black roses.
Yeah, I still don't know much about it, but they just look really nice. And I was like, okay, it's not naturally occurring, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I can find a black rose sometime, somewhere in life, just like how I can find. I know that racism is never going to get diminished, but
Mm.
I'm hoping that hopefully there will be a time when, if racism does occur, 9 times out of 10, it's addressed
Mm.
and it's actually worked on rather than swept under the rug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meyys, give us your.
So I honestly would say that the reason why, I mean, at least from my perspective, when we were talking about the flowers, and is just why it made so much sense, and we're going with that theme. And even if you go on our website, for example, we have like for our volunteers, they're not called volunteers, they're called florists. For our creative ambassadors, they are our butterflies, and also for our community ambassadors, they're called bees. So for us, the reason why we chose the flower theme, I think, is because we wanted to give a pretty image, because most of the time migrants have this, like, in the eye of the public, unfortunately, it's like this very hostile, very sort of like ugly image of what immigrants are, or what they do, or what benefit they bring to this country, because they have, there's this perceived notion of like they bring no benefit, they're just on benefit in a way.
Yeah.
On benefit, sorry. And so basically I just, it was just the concept of flowers, we just wanted to make it in a way just like, we want to spread kindness and, like, just like in a way good vibes, if that makes sense. And I think the flowers made so much sense because flowers usually start with a seed, and even though they're just seeds and they grow in different environments, but they are able to flourish to become very pretty flowers that we pay a lot of money for. So for example, a lotus flower, it's a flower that grows in mud, in very muddy water, in very harsh conditions, but it manages to not only flourish on a surface, from muddy waters, but also survives on those, like on the top of a muddy water, and it just flourishes, and it stays the how long it stays, and it has very strong roots at the bottom. And even if you try and like cut a lotus flower, you would realize how much the system underneath it is
Yeah.
so deeper than just what the surface shows of a beautiful flower. And I'll quickly speak about the Lily of Ages. I think the reason why Edmund has chosen this one is because it's a very pretty flower, but also at the same time, it's pretty when it's closed and it's pretty when it's open. And it just represent the fact that even when you're young and you're still learning, you are valid and you should be supported. And when you are a bit like older or you are from the elderly population, I guess, you open up and you have your wisdom and everything like that. But you are still pretty, even if your, let's say, petals are a bit darker in color, they're a bit withered away. So I feel like that's why we chose the three flowers, because personally they meant something to us and because we liked them, but we also were able to relate it to what a migrant experience is, or what specifically maybe our experiences has been like.
Thank you for answering that for me, because that was my initial thought in terms of, did you choose that specific kind of model because of your own personal experiences? And no, I think it's a very powerful, powerful thing. Thank you, ladies, for sharing that with me. My next question for you: why do you think mental health struggles in immigrant communities are often overlooked?
Meyys, do you want to do the honors?
Ooh, the pressure. Okay, so I feel like, unfortunately, I will speak from sort of like my experience, but also the experience of people that I know and what I've heard as well, is that most of the time when you are a migrant or immigrant and you come to this country whereby for example, you come from a country where, let's say, there's war or there's just very difficult economical situations, for example, and then you come here and transport system is good. The sun shines us every once in a while. Food is on the table. There's no bombs on top of your head. You are basically, you are, in a way, your human necessities or your human rights are the basic human rights are met.
Yeah.
But that was not the case. You came from a place whereby those were a luxury. So when you come here, you are in some communities you are so grateful that you, or even your parents or the family that you grew up in, don't understand the importance of, oh yes, that's true. Now there's maybe other challenges that we should be looking at. For example, that when you had your basic necessities taken from you and then now you have them, no, you should be grateful. Why are you even, why are you bringing problems to yourselves? It's a lot of the time as well, as people are not educated as well. So they come from this country, there's not a lot of mental health education, or even just even education about health in general. And that's why you would find a lot of the times that, for example, migrants, they barely go to the doctor, or even if they do go, they don't even follow the doctor's instruction. Is because there's just a bit of education, and sometimes it's just as simple as it's taboo. It's as simple as that. It's when you are going through, let's say, a mental health crisis, or you're going through just like mental health challenges, as simple as that, or just day-to-day little bit of like stress or anything like that, it's deemed as, in certain, for example, communities or in certain families, oh, you're crazy. What do you mean you have mental health problems? That's equal to crazy. And that's why this encourages a lot of people to come up and basically speak about it, or even seek help, or try and do even simple things that are, not necessarily therapy, but like, for example, going on a walk because that's good for mental health, or something like that. It's just little practices that are not embedded in you when you have now come to this country having your necessity met. You should be now thriving for better. You should be looking for jobs. You should be aiming for CEO positions, and you always go up and up and up and up. But no one ever teaches you how to look inwards. So yeah, I think that's like from my like sort of like perspective on things. Yeah, more that.
Yeah. I think, yeah, definitely. You literally stole words out of my mouth. And I think another point to add to that is, from the outside perspective, the reason why this is basically overlooked is because it's just seen as, oh, this is how immigrants are. And also the idea, basically the way the media is portraying immigrants to the outside world, quote unquote, and how they're basically showing that, oh, immigrants are stealing your jobs, they're stealing your money, your food, they're stealing your careers, everything. They don't bring any benefit to the country that you're from.
Yeah.
And so they're seen as like this kind of like these villains almost in like the Western world specifically. And I think because of that, people often tend to like overlook the issues and the stigmatization that a lot of immigrants face and deal with. And I think it's just seen as like, oh, this is just the immigrant experience. Like
Mm.
the way they're living is like 10 times better than how locals are living, for example. And that's totally not the case. A lot of people have this, like, for example, they have this idea that council houses are just these five-star hotels and people are just living lavishly. They're getting so many benefits and it's all like taxpayer money that a lot of people are working 10 times as hard for to try and build a better life for themselves, and the immigrants are just stealing that. So that's just the other point that I want to add to it, because it's totally false, and the way it's portrayed in social media and just news articles in general is very false, because that's totally not the case. Another issue as well is like the idea that, oh, they come from really horrible backgrounds, so like war, which Mace touched on, and all of a sudden they're now painted as, terrorists, people who just commit crime, they don't know any better, so on and so forth. And it's just these false kind of ideologies and these false kind of um the way they're portrayed is like so not true, if that makes sense. And I feel like most immigrants are not like that. Although each community, each group does have its bad parts, it doesn't mean that you should also paint everyone the same way. And I think that's one of the reasons why oftentimes these struggles that immigrants are facing and these problems that they're facing are so overlooked, because they either deserve it or they don't face it, if
Mm.
that makes sense. Like these issues don't exist.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow, that's a lot to digest. But no, it's so important in terms of what you ladies are saying and expressing, because we don't really. I mean, if I didn't speak to you, I wouldn't have so much access to this particular side of things, because obviously, yes, I'm a therapist too, but I don't deal with the side of, immigrants and, the communities and stuff. I don't have that access like you ladies do. So I'm learning so much, and I really do appreciate it, because it just opens my mind to just so many things. And I guess just the awareness of what you ladies do is so important to be reached, like, globally, if I'm being totally honest. I wanted to ask you a question around race and mental health. And I wanted to ask, what can be done to break the stigma around therapy in communities of color?
So before that, I would just want to address like the issue surrounding that to begin with. I feel like immigrants in general, or people of color. Um, Side note again, sorry, I just get off track a lot. I've been using the term people of color so many times, but recently I've grown to realize that I actually don't like that term, because it just, I don't know, it just makes white people feel like the default, and it just makes me feel a little uncomfortable. And I know that it derived from like the term colored people, which is like now seen as offensive.
Yeah.
And I feel like, saying people of color is fine and everything, but I'm just trying to like limit my use to it.
What would you say then, Mawada? What would you instead, if
I
you were
would
to
just
change
say
it?
maybe like, people who are the minority in wherever they are, or like, people from ethnic backgrounds. So I'm
Okay.
gonna try and use that, but don't mind me if I slip the people of color.
No, no, that's okay.
I'm so used to saying it, and I think I'm trying to like work on not saying it, just because I just I don't know. I saw like a TikTok one time and someone was like, why are we trying to make white people the default for everything? Like, even when you're living in like, like somewhere in Africa, let's say, like Sudan, which is where I'm from,
Yeah.
and predominantly it's people who are black, we're still putting or upholding the white person at such a high standard, when they're so not the minority, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just like a small thought that I had. But back to the question, in terms of like immigrants, like a lot of them, they deal with stress because of the variables that are around them. And most of the time, this stress is actually chronic stress. And it's a buildup of like so many different things that they are struggling with. And it just leads to like high levels of anxiety, depression. It can even like extend from mental health issues to even physical health issues. So it can even transform depending on how stressful the human body gets, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like the stress is derived from like the pressure that a lot of immigrants feel from like government, politically speaking, from like society, and even from each other, like fellow immigrants as well. Like we kind of uphold each other at such a weird standard, and we try and get these kind of weird expectations that cause a lot of stress to the individual. And I feel like as immigrants or as migrants or people of ethnic minorities,
Mm.
um, we kind of have to work twice as hard, to even be on the same level almost as like other individuals or like locals or white people in general.
Yeah.
And I feel like this does lead to like imposter syndrome, which I, spoke about earlier, just lack of confidence, and it can even lead to burnout, which can cause a huge mess, to be fair. And I feel like it impacts every aspect of life. And I think because of that, we need to try and like raise this. And I think one way we can do it is by trying to like form community driven solutions. So we can, you know, raise awareness by, spreading the word, posting on socials, having discussions, social hubs, webinars, having talks, having people of like similar backgrounds talk about their experience, because the more people talk about things, the safer people feel to talk about their own personal problems. And so we try and like create this kind of community driven approach and try and find solutions into combating this kind of low mental health that people are feeling.
Yeah.
So I think that's mainly how we can try and overcome this. But yeah, the issue itself is bigger than what people imagine, because it's not talked about often, if that makes sense.
Meyys, is there anything you wanted to add, or?
Just quickly, I just want to shout out like a charity that I know they do some fantastic work. And when I spoke to the founder, she said something about like when therapy is provided to people I'm trying to like not use more this
No, yeah, see, you'll get used to it. Like try and get better over time, the more conscious you are of it. But yeah.
I'll work on it. I'll work on it. People from ethnic minorities. But she mentioned the fact that most of the time, for example, she is Black herself, and she was talking about that when she goes to her therapist, for example, and she's talking about specific certain issues. And when that therapist, even if that therapist is a woman, and if that woman is a white woman, she would not be able to sort of like understand on a deep level the struggle that she has been through. And obviously like I'm definitely like butchering her story, everything like that. But so basically what she does, she has a charity and it's called the Matilda Alves Foundation. And what they do is that they provide Black women it help basically mental health help and therapy, and it's provided by other Black women. So it's I feel like in that way it makes it, just like Mawada said, it feels a bit of a safer space. And maybe that also like takes a bit of the friction when it comes to certain sort of like ethnic minorities, when they feel like, well, if I go to my therapist and my therapist is A, B, C, and D, and they cannot relate to me, then like what's the point really? But if we are able to sort of like have this personalized therapy whereby the person that you're speaking to most likely is from the same ethnic minority as you, or has been through something, or basically has those skills, then maybe it makes it a bit easier. So that's why I just wanted to quickly mention that the fact that like she has this amazing charity and foundation. And like if you have a look at what she does, it's quite like eye-opening, because she saw that there was a problem in sort of like the mental health sort of like let's say sector, and then she went for it. She created something to fix that problem that she heard that she personally has basically been through.
Yeah, well, that's really important, and I love that idea. And for sure, I feel like if you see someone that looks like you, or has similar experiences to you, then you're more inclined to feel safer and to try and raise whatever issues you have. But I also think to add to that as well, like even if it was like a different kind of therapist who's not black per se,
Mm.
I think we should also try and work on the fact, or propose a different kind of solution where we try and maybe train other health professionals, mental health professionals specifically, since we're talking about this topic, on trying to understand like cultural aspects of things, and like immigrants like conditions and the way they live their life culturally speaking,
Yeah.
and what they're used to, and being understanding of that and being open-minded on that, because a lot of the times this kind of gets dismissed, or like you get labeled a certain way if you do raise those issues.
Mhm.
And I think maybe including a different type of demographic as well, and training those professionals, just to like try and reach as much of an audience, or to try and spread more mental health perks as possible to the outside world.
Mhm.
I think we should try and also involve other people of color, or other backgrounds. So yeah, I think it's really amazing what she's doing as well, but I think also we should include other people as well, to try and make this more of like a generalized thing rather than a specific issue.
Thank you for sharing that with me, ladies. I wanted to move on to, I guess, age and mental health. How do younger immigrants struggle with mental health? And just in terms of their identity, their cultural isolation, and with, social media now and TikTok and all these different vices, how affected are they? Like how is that affecting their mental health, their mental well-being, would you say?
You wanna go, Meyys?
Sure. Okay, so I feel like when it comes to the younger generations,
Yeah.
the thing is that the challenges that they face that maybe our grandparents or parents didn't have to face
Mm.
is the fact that nowadays the hate is not just in your school. The hate is not just in your household. The sort of like the what do they call it? The bad criticism, the body dysmorphia problems that emerges at that age when you're still developing into your body, for example, is not just what has been said in the household, what has been said at school, or what has been said in your circle of friends. It goes now in like worldwide. You can post a picture and it's possible that the entire planet can see it. And therefore um you are basically you're facing that much criticism. And when it comes to also like younger people, like for example, there's now a problem in, for example, let's say the social media community, whereby parents are posting their children on social media and how ethical that is. So I feel like when it comes to social media, is just it's a very not regulated. Everyone gets to create an account called the same themselves, like, oh, the let's say for example the Black Rose, right? And then they start hitting on people left, right, and center. They start like spreading hate, spreading rumors. So I feel like that's a challenge that is unique to this generation, to the point that I don't think we are equipped enough in, for example, mental health, or just in general, that we're able to deal with it. So what I'm trying to say here is that, for example, if I was a teenager right now, and if I go to my mom and I'm telling her about A, B, C, and D, or what kind of thing the hate I'm facing on TikTok, and let's say my mom is not on TikTok, she's a bit of like the older generation, how hard is it to bridge that gap of like sort of like knowledge? Because when she was a teenager, most of the, let's say, most of the criticism, or most of the mental health thing that she went through were nothing beyond her school, her family, or stuff like that. But now there's social media added to it. But I'd say also that the fact that sometimes when it comes to immigrant household, there's this perceived misconception that when you are young, you don't know if you're actually going through a mental crisis, or you're going through a mental health challenges. So for them, it's just like, oh, you're too young. Oh, it's hormonal. Oh, you grow out of it. Um, younger people, when they are going into their identity, they are not respected with their opinion. They're shut down. Their ideas are sort of like, even if they're great ideas, their age dictates the fact that it's not a really good idea anymore. So I feel like all of these little things that happen around them, and they're not validated, and they are dismissed, and they feel like they're never good enough. Even if they hit the age 18, there's always going to be an older generation saying, oh, he's too young, you haven't been through enough. They are, the age represents how wise they are, when in fact it's not really age, it's experiences that shapes and is more of an indicator of how wise you are. It's literally your experiences and not your age. But I feel like it's that sort of gray area of the fact that, like, it's the social media, it's the misconception, and it's no one is taking younger people seriously. It's I have to say it, like, most of it's I'm not gonna be completely honest. Since I came to the UK, I saw a massive age problem, like ageism. I thought in my head that when you come to a country that is as open-minded, and especially as London, I never thought that younger people would be dismissed the way that they are. I saw it like firsthand, and I know I'm turning 26 this year. And even then, because I'm in the 20s sort of like region, I also have been displaced myself, and sometimes I have to qualify so many times that I'm 26 years old. I have done A, B, C, and D. I can't believe right now we're talking about my age. But it's a serious issue that people are very much putting too much emphasis on a number when it does not really matter. A number is just a number. And then yeah, I think that's how it also, and when it comes to the elderly population, I guess it's also the fact that they're sort of like, they have been through this for such a long time that does it I mean, at least from their it does matter, but from their perspective, they probably see it and be like, does it really matter? Does it, like me sort of like talking about my mental health at 50 years old, I'm gonna now all of a sudden talk about my feelings? Like, that's outrageous. And obviously, like, I'm talking about like from some of the things that I've heard. And obviously, when you have for the past 50 years lived with the idea that mental health is a white person issue, and you have lived in a culture whereby if you have any problems, go speak to your family. If you have any problems, you go do A, B, C, and D within your community. Don't take this outside. After 50 years, it becomes so much of a habit. It's so hard to break. Just like someone that said that there's gonna be so much work to be done for us to basically break those like stereotypes in a way. And also, when you have lived in a community whereby men, for example, are would be labeled, or they would be thought to be less of if they seek mental health help, or then thus, let's say, quote unquote manly, then also that adds a layer of things that people don't want to come forward when they are for example, they're a man at 50. Now he lived his life to the standards of what he thought it was dignifiable and then honorable, and then now he's gonna come and talk about his feelings. How shameful. And obviously, like, I know it's audio only, so I'm being 100% sarcastic here. So yeah.
No, Meyys, thank you. I think it's so key to speak on the effects of the different environments that young people are in, and how they impact them mentally and what they're absorbing. And you even touched upon it as well when you kind of spoke about the older generation, and I wanted to even ask about that too. And Mawada, you can definitely chime in as well.
Yeah.
Is and I think you said it, when you're coming from a different country to come to London or UK, and you have a particular mindset from back home, and you come to the UK, you're here for, I don't know, what, 30, 40 years, however long it is, and the mindset or the belief doesn't change. So you're, in some ways, I had this conversation with a therapist yesterday, that some of the older generation now, maybe all, are trying to find ways in which to access, okay, there is this change happening. Okay, my daughter is going to therapy, or there are these vices now. How do we support the older immigrants who may face like loneliness and isolation, and what can we do to support them and I guess help them with their mental well-being and their mental health, especially if they're in a point now where they're like, you know what, I've had this system or this mindset or belief based upon whether it be culture or tradition or from my family, but I'm seeing that the world is changing and I want to make a change too. How do we support them, ladies? What would you say?
With older immigrants, it's
Mm.
a bit sticky because obviously they they're older, but they also have so much experience in life. And so it's really hard sometimes to, like, once someone has their mindset on something, or like set the or basically they have an idea of how said system works, it's
Yes.
really hard to reverse that. But I think the biggest issue with older immigrants is deep isolation. I feel like, for example, I'll give you a bit of like an anecdotal scenario.
Please.
So Mace and I actually met in Jordan initially, which is a predominantly Muslim country. It's an Arabic speaking country. And we actually had a teacher at school. So we went to the same school as well. That teacher was completely British. He was a white British person, and he was super nice, super amazing. And he was new to Jordan, and he actually married a Southeast Asian woman. So she is Muslim and everything, but obviously she doesn't speak Arabic. So although she is Muslim, she would fit in terms of like her religion in Jordan in such a new environment, but she still felt very isolated because she didn't speak the language and she didn't know where to find fellow Southeast Asian communities. She couldn't relate to other people in Jordan, although a lot of them share the similarity of being Muslim. Now, I think with that isolation, it kind of got so it got to her to the point where he also had to like leave his job and end his contract. And I think the problem with deep isolation is it really does cause a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of these mental health issues, which with a lot of the older immigrants,
Mm.
they sometimes don't even realize that they have these issues,
Yeah.
and they just think like, "Oh, it's just an environmental thing," or, "Oh, like, it's fine, I'll just sleep it off and it will go away. I don't know why I'm feeling like this." Or sometimes they take it onto other people. They take it out on other people.
Mm.
Oftentimes it could be their kids, you know? So I think one way to help that is to try and combat the isolation that older immigrants feel. And I think, as I mentioned earlier with the race issue, is try to create community spaces. Another issue that I've noticed with the elderly or older immigrants is how there isn't much digital literacy. So a lot of them, they don't understand how tech works. They don't understand how social media works.
Mm.
And I think that's a really huge problem because I'm hearing a lot of stories, like here in the UK as well, where you see like an elderly get scammed, and they get their money taken away, or sometimes even I think recently they're scammers who are literally calling up like people of like the older demographic and literally acting like their kid. Like sometimes they might be like, "Oh, hi, I'm your daughter, I want you to pay me like $500 or £500.
Mm.
Can you help me out?" And they fall for that. And it's really sad because a lot of them, they don't know much about like the tech knowledge that is needed to try and be more secure, have that like cybersecurity, but also like that physical security as well.
Mm.
And I think another thing is because of the isolation as well, a lot of these immigrants also feel very disconnected from their families as well. And I think that's also a big issue. So I think we should have that like dialogue, that intergenerational dialogue between the older immigrants and the younger immigrants so that they can kind of form that cohesive bond, form that kind of understanding. Another thing is maybe we can have like tech literacy workshops around so that, older immigrants or even younger immigrants can benefit from, and also have these community spaces. So I think these are ways that we can try and like combat the issues. Another thing that I wanted to touch upon, which Meyys kind of already highlighted earlier regarding younger immigrants, the feeling of belongingness. I feel like from me personally speaking, I grew up in so many different countries around the world, and I could never relate. Like I felt like I could never fit in to like my own cultural background in my own country, which is Sudan. So every time I go back to my home country, I'm seen as like too westernized. And every time I'm in the West, I'm too ethnic. So it's like I never felt that sense of belonging. I never felt that feeling of like that home, or like, a safe space that I can go back to, if that makes sense. And although you can create your own, I think it's really hard as a young person to like come to basically do that and understand that. So it can really be overwhelming, and it does take a toll on your mental health. Another thing with younger immigrants is also the I think the emotional detachment, or the emotional absence that they face from their families and the people around them. And I think that really is a very critical thing. I feel like a lot of the times parents, like immigrant parents, they don't understand the weight of being emotionally available for your child. I think it's really important to make sure that your child sees you as their role model. They look up to you, they idolize you as their parent, and they basically you're a safe space for them, if that makes sense. And I don't see that a lot with in immigrant households. Oftentimes you see the immigrant child, like they get compared to the next door neighbor by their parents, all the time. And it's so normalized, and it's like this like intergenerational trauma that gets passed on between generations. And I think with the child, because they don't know any better, if like their parents go against them, or their parents go like, oh, why are you doing this? This is too westernized. This is not how you are. And it makes the child feel small. It makes the child feel very confused and overwhelmed. And so slowly and surely, they start looking up to other people. And oftentimes, those are their fellow friends. And who knows, God forbid, their fellow friends might be, people who commit crime, or like, they take drugs or something like that. And it kind of puts them in a really deep hole. And they think like, okay, this is the right way. Um, of life, or like this is my way of freedom, or this is how my life should be. And so they start to create this kind of sense of identity of their own. And they're still not very happy. They're still confused. They're still treadling the waters. And I think being emotionally present for your child, or for like young people in general, is super super important.
Mm.
And I think it's like a stepping stone to forming a healthy household, a healthy relationship, a healthy family, and just trying to cut down that generational trauma, if that makes sense. So yeah, those are all my points that I wanted to raise. But definitely communicating this and spreading awareness would definitely help. And just creating workshops, and or like seminars, or like just having these discussions with other immigrants or people from different backgrounds
Yeah.
would really help.
When you feel like you're in like a CPD, that's what I feel like I am with
Yeah.
you ladies. I feel like there's so much information. I know there's so much, but I'm grateful for this opportunity. We spoke about age, we spoke about race. I wanted to ask a question based on gender. And I wanted to ask you ladies, what steps can be taken to ensure inclusive and accessible mental health support for all individuals, regardless of their gender identity? What can be done?
I think that awareness and education are so, 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 so important, because when it comes to immigrant households or immigrant communities, the gender inequality is off the charts, unfortunately. And that comes because of culture, because of social norms, because of the where they have come from. It depends, but it really is, there is very set standards to what a woman should do and what a man is responsible for. But there's a lot of like sort of, I'd say, definition and rules of what both genders should be like. So a man should be very, very, very manly and should never be in touch with their emotions, and they should basically, as much as possible, be outside the house to basically earn money. And then a woman responsibility in most communities, the way that I've seen it is that she's supposed to take care of the kids, take care of the household, be educated enough that she could, I mean, nowadays, at least, not back in the day, it wasn't like that, but nowadays she should be educated enough that she's able to aid the kids when it comes to their education, but they're not educated enough that she would want anything for her own or like have a job. And those social, I guess, norms in those communities can be very, very, very hard. And because especially when you come to this country and you see the opportunities that there are, for example, for women, but then not only that, when you see that men go to therapy, men speak about their emotions, men don't have to basically, as simple as that, oh, if there's no social norms on what a bag a man has to carry to be identified as manly, when you see those in this community, this country that you live in, but that's not what you grow up with, that's not where your family is doing, it feels like you the sense of belonging, it becomes distorted. So I feel like what we should definitely try to achieve is basically education. And when I say education, I don't mean like university education, but I mean educating people on that mental health is not just a white person issue. It's not a Western ideology. It's not a white people problem. It could happen to you. Small steps that could take place. So, for example, I think that yes, therapy is so important and valuable. But the problem with therapy is that it's not as accessible in the UK, at least because of the NHS, the long waiting list. And there's also the language barrier as well. It comes with that. So I don't think in the NHS, at least I don't know personally of any sort of like mental health available in different languages. I'm sure there is, but probably not as readily available. And also I'm assuming it's going to be even a longer of a waiting list. And also as simple as the fact that, like, for example, I don't know that there is different languages mental health help, for example. Maybe also advocating for those, like making sure that everyone knows that if needed, there is that kind of help. But also it's the fact that like maybe we should spread more awareness on what you can do day to day to make sure that you are taking care of yourself mentally, even if you, for example, don't have access to a therapist for whatever reason it is. Maybe you don't have time, you're working full time. And so I think when it comes to that, and then also maybe try and do a bit of like online things. For example, a lot of the times, which is unfortunate, but there's in immigrant communities, there's this perceived notion that maybe women should not go outside by themselves, or there is this thing like, oh, even if they do go outside by themselves, they don't feel comfortable going to, let's say, where their GP clinic is, or far enough or stuff like that. So they have to go accompanied by someone. And even when they are accompanied by someone, maybe there should be awareness on the fact that, like, if she's going to, say, her GP, and then a young girl is going to her GP and she's going through, let's say, mental health problems. But if her mom goes inside the room with her to the GP, most likely she's not gonna disclose those problems. She's not gonna speak about them. And that goes for both genders, I guess. So not I guess, but I'm sure of. So it definitely is when there's this a perceived notion that, because as we touched upon, young people don't know any better, so they always have to be accompanied. But maybe when it's a GP appointment, try and you should spread awareness on the fact that GP should, you know, have a bit of alone time with the person to make sure that they are comfortable enough to speak about certain things. And when it comes to immigrants, when I mean like young people, it could be the daughter could be 25 years old and her mom would still go to the appointments with her. The father would still go with the son, or even the mother would still go with the son. And also that adds a layer of that if they're feeling pain in certain areas, let's say, or like anything like that, that they feel ashamed of saying, they're not going to talk about it. So maybe there should be a system whereby they are, the doctor is left a little bit alone with that patient specifically so they can disclose those kind of things. And I feel like awareness on how basically mental health is not a men issue or a woman issue. It's just a human being issue. It's anyone who has a brain. That's how sometimes your brain works. It's just it does that. And it's not about whether or not that's right or wrong. It's about what you should do to make it better and what you should do to manage it. It's not, and also not add labels to it. You're not crazy if you are going to therapy. You are not crazy if you are if you are depressed. Let's call it what it is: anxiety, stress, depression. It's not it's also, there's a lot of times there's certain mental health um let's say disorders that are socially acceptable and others aren't, and it's very unfortunate. So maybe awareness on that as well. And there's also, it's crazy, but there's even, for example, depression, for example. It's deemed as, it's okay for women to be depressed because they're emotional, they're hormonal in a way, but then men, like, that's very not manly of them to be depressed and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like we should take those misconceptions away completely by educating, advocating at the fact that depression doesn't know gender, anxiety does not know gender, stress does not know gender. Stress is not only allowed to happen to men because men work and women don't. Why would a woman be stressed if she's a housewife, for example? That's how a lot of people perceive it, and it's crazy because as me, for example, when I hear this, I'm like, am I hearing this correctly? Please tell me that I was transferred to another universe and somehow this is the norms here, because this is unbelievable. But then you realize, no, that's actually, it happens like that. People actually label it by gender. They actually think depression it's a woman thing, it's a hormone thing. It's if she, for example, gave birth, it's okay. It's like the hormones or whatever. And it's like, it's so much deeper than that. And when it's swept under the rug like that, that's when people only seek help when it's so extreme to the point is like, it's not too late, but rather it's going to be more difficult. So the faster we can get those people to acknowledge the fact that they have A, B, C, and D, and they seek help for it, the faster they can feel better, the faster they can start living day-to-day life, quote unquote, normally, whatever that means, but just like to the most optimal that they could.
Mawada, anything you want to add or?
Yeah, no, Mace basically hit the nail on the head. But yeah, no, she raised really amazing points. And they do like overlap on like a few ideas that I had as well. But I think one of the main things is to basically try and reduce or limit the stigma revolving around people's ideas of like gender roles, if that makes sense. Like I hear a lot of my fellow immigrant friends, like male friends, for example, a lot of them, they're not really fond of the idea of marrying or settling with a woman who earns more than them, for example, because it would bruise their quote unquote ego.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this is not the reality of the situation. Like, it's fine if that happens. Love is love, you know? It shouldn't be determined based on your bank account or how much income you have, or, oh, God forbid, a woman is like a manager and I'm just like an advisor or something. It's just like these kind of like standards that people uphold of themselves and others should not be a determining factor of how they should live their life. And I think we should try and reduce those stigmas or those kind of ideologies. And also, I feel like having that open space or community based discussion would really help a lot as well. And I think another thing is a lot of people, like immigrants, they think that mental health is just like therapy. And it's like, therapy, there's a huge red X on therapy. And it's like, I think maybe we should have those discussions where we don't always deem mental health as therapy, but like just like a discussion or a conversation to be had. And I feel like a lot of people don't speak up about that, especially men. Like, I feel like women are more emotional when it comes to like speaking about their experiences and also their mental well-being. And I feel like men are pressurized into not speaking at all. And I think we should try and have those open discussions. We should try and speak with each other, because not everyone would realistically speaking would have access to professional help. And I think having those discussions with your fellow mates or your family or like your siblings or so on and so forth can still help a tremendous amount compared to like not speaking about these issues at all. So I think just having that discussion, putting your foot forward, raising the situation, and I think the more you speak about these things, the more quote unquote normalized it is for you to speak up about certain issues, and then the more people come forward to speak about their issues. And I feel like when we then realize how like the realm of the problem is how we can try and find possible solutions for it. So I think it just starts within, honestly, and it's just having people take that initiative and actually speaking up. And lastly, like I mentioned before as well, just training mental health professionals or healthcare professionals in general of like the cultural care or like the cultural ideologies that people have, just so that they're open-minded in providing the care that they can for that individual, and
Yeah.
also understanding where they're coming from, because oftentimes there would be gaps in knowledge if you know these things aren't communicated. And it's like, sometimes someone might be like, oh, this is just how I am, but no, it's not just how you are. Like, this is not normal, and
Yeah.
you think it's normal, but it's not. And yeah, and also what Mace also mentioned, like there's a huge like language barriers amongst immigrants as well, which can really help a lot. So maybe having like translated sessions or like translated mental health guides that can help a lot. And also like, the internet is very helpful as well, and we have social media and AI, so these things can easily happen. I just feel like we're not taking that step to make it happen, if that makes sense.
Or even going to learn the language for yourself so it can
Yes. Yeah.
become
Yeah.
even more comfortable for whoever you see in a session. Ladies, thank you so much for just all the information and all the tools and the necessary things that needs to happen now and moving forward. I wanted to turn the attention in terms of like solutions and moving forward. How can the listeners become allies in advocating for mental health in immigrant communities? And what resources would you both recommend for those struggling with mental health?
Nice. Do you want to do the honors?
Mawada was giving me the honors. So I feel like personally speaking, I feel like the biggest challenge would be is within our communities.
Mm.
And that is to say that a lot of the times most communities they dismiss mental health problems is because they have been through worse, physically speaking as well. So for example, it's always like if for example a mother who has come from a country of war or like from famine or from just like very 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 difficult economical situation, and then they come here, and then they, for example, her daughter herself go through mental health problems. They always they always have this default setting of like, but I've been through war. I can
Mm.
what's a little bit of depression? And also there's also the survival guilt that comes with it as well, saying that, but my people are not seeking mental health. They don't even have food to put on the table. And I feel like realizing that and making sure that we work within to understand that just because we have been through something worse does not mean that yes, it's been 2 weeks since I haven't seen the sun and actually making me feel a little bit depressed. It's as simple as that. And it's okay for it to be as simple as that.
Mm.
Oh, I'm stressed because at work, the workload has been a lot, or my manager has not been kind to me. Yes, some people could argue that that's not as extreme as what you've been through before, but that's still valid.
Yeah.
And I think we should work on this. And I honestly, like, I'll just not to sound like I'm preaching but I also had to sort of like look at this from that perspective as well myself, whereby just because you've been through worse does not mean that what you're going through right now, quote unquote, that is not as extreme is not valid.
Mm.
You could be depressed because you haven't seen the sun. That's okay. You could be annoyed at let's say certain underground station not having internet, losing the song or the podcast you're listening to. I know they're not big deals, and I know it's not the end of the world, I guess. But it's okay for us to have feelings to small things. Even they're very insignificant, and this should not make me mad. I've been, like I've lived through worse things. No, it's okay for it to make you mad. It's okay for it to make you anxious. It's okay for it to make you stressed. So I feel like it should be within that we have to accept that um certain things happen and it does not have to be as bad as they used to be, or as bad as, for example, our communities are back home. It's okay, we are going through it right now, and that's okay, and let me work on it, let me do certain things, and let's just like Maud also said, which I thought was very good points, that let's normalize small steps, like for example, it's not therapy is not accessible for everybody, but little social, like, in the internet is, and there's a lot of like good things that comes with the internet. As bad as it could be, it's very good as well. So when it comes to like, oh, hot girl walk, like, because it's like, it's good for your mental health. I'm stressed, I'm gonna go on my hot girl walk. Or for example, when it comes to having this alone time, journaling, little things, writing down your feelings, or even basically, I've seen a lot of people who don't like to write down things, so they open the camera and they have this digital sort of like uh blueprint on social media, and they just talk about their feelings, and they have like 3 followers, their friends basically. Normalize that. There's a lot of the time where it's like a funny sort of like funny thing that they do on TikTok, that they stop someone in the streets. And initially it was the trend of like they would stop them and ask them about either what they're listening to or what they're wearing. And then now all of a sudden it became this fit of like, I've seen a couple of TikToks where they'd be like, oh, I'm listening to my friend's voice note of her telling me how her day went, and like, all the drama and the gossip. Normalize that, having that sense of like friendship where you can go and talk about like your feelings, and having this close friend or close community or group chat that you can talk about like the things that you're not allowed to talk about, like I say at home, not allowed, but like they're not normalizing though. For example, at home or at school or you work, you have that building, that friendship that could be your safe space. Once you have a safe space, it doesn't have to be the therapist's office, it doesn't have to be your GP's office, it could be as simple as your bedroom. Little things that you do, that because of social media we're able to see that how people, for example, they'd be like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit better and I'm gonna start cleaning my room. That could be inspirational for you to be like, oh, actually, I've also been feeling a little bit down, let me start like rearranging my room a little bit. So I feel like those little things that we could ad advocate for, that could help with mental health, until therapy becomes available for all, until it becomes available in all languages, until it becomes inclusive enough, and our therapists are trained, just like what they said, on cultural context, that we are comfortable, that it becomes just like, oh, I have a toothache, I'm going to the dentist. It becomes a thing, oh, have a lot on my mind, I'm going to go to my therapist. Until it's normalized to that level,
Yeah.
I think we should keep on talking about it.
Mawada?
Yeah, no, Mace, honestly, I'm loving your
Yeah,
idea. And it took me back to our first ever event, which was a few weeks ago, and it was called Love Across the Board. And I think
Congrats, by the
a
way.
lot.
I've seen it. It looks amazing.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it was a huge success, and I think a lot of what Mace was saying kind of like took me back to that day, because the event was more or less about love for self, love for others, and love for environment. And I think it's really important to try and take time out to take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, the spaces that you create. And I think it should be like the first step, more or less, into how you can combat these difficulties that you're facing, because mental health is mental for sure. So, when you try and look good, you feel good, and then everything else kind of falls into place in a sense. And every day, if you take baby steps to try and, be better or try and build a better life, um, even if it's something so small, like maybe sleeping 5 minutes earlier every day, or taking a hot girl walk, like May said, just trying to nurture and feed yourself and try and grow yourself and your identity would really help. And I think oftentimes these things are kind of dismissed, and it's easier said than done as well. Like, a lot of people, they don't have the privileges of practicing this and doing that. And some people don't even have the knowledge of it. They don't even know that how, maybe, I don't know, wearing your favorite shirt would make you feel 10 times better already, to like start your day. But in terms of like other like general kind of solutions, obviously something that we already touched upon, like maybe maybe having more funding or like more awareness on like the immigrant-led mental health services, spaces that can provide, so that they're more like culturally nuanced and that knowledge is more like spoken about. And then maybe having like community support groups and also like digital resources for people who have that language barrier or like who wish to learn the English language, for example, if they're in a Western country, providing these services essentially. In terms of like the allies, like, you know, how listeners can become allies,
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe just amplifying the voices of immigrants or the voices of people struggling, I think is really important. Speaking about that, standing up for that, making sure that you are spreading awareness, you're engaging, but you're also listening. You're also understanding their stories and their background and where they come from is really important. And I think also the way listeners can help as well is to try and challenge any kind of discrimination or any bad mouth or any bad talk that happens around. Speak up, you know, whether it's in the workplace, at home, in healthcare setting, wherever it is, like just speaking up and actually acknowledging that, okay, this is not okay, this is not right, and this shouldn't be happening. And I think a lot of the times people are too scared to like jump in, especially where we live right now in London. People just like to mind their own business. And a lot of things happen which get dismissed, but it doesn't hurt to like just, you know, if you see something wrong, it doesn't hurt to like acknowledge it or at least like do something about it or say something. Obviously people, they do get intimidated because there can be consequences. But if it's something like in the workplace, for example, you can't keep seeing like your fellow colleague get mistreated every day. It's just, you know, just doing that and helping out. And obviously, lastly, like just supporting organizations and communities and charities that stand up for this. Like for example, ATB, like us, like we're standing up for this. We're trying to build a safer environment, a happier place for immigrants to try and thrive and succeed and all of that. So I think just supporting those other you know, organizations and communities would really help as well. But yeah, that's more or less it.
I see.
Can I quickly add and say, I hate to quote the underground, but see it, say it, sorted. So if I see, I came in Monday when they were speaking about the last part. I was like, the underground.
Yeah, and also like this whole thing is like it's not an individual struggle. Like this is a collective responsibility that everyone needs to take a part in. Whether you're an immigrant, whether you're a white person, whether you you know, come from an English speaking background, a foreign place, whatever it is, it's a collective community responsibility, if that makes sense. So if we don't all work together, if we don't all address the issues, then nothing is going to work. Nothing is going to pan out. So I think it's just trying to form that community would be really, really important. And then once we get that space, once we get that community, once we get those people, is when we can try and turn the world around and make it a better place.
Ladies, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really really honored and blessed to hear the work you're doing, and just your insight and knowledge is just incredible. And I know it's just going to continue to grow, and you ladies will continue to be a staple within the mental health slash the immigrant community slash just general life. I think is so key and so important, the work you ladies are doing. So I commend you highly on that. Ladies, the listeners have heard you today. What is the best way for them to reach out to see what you're doing, to get in touch? Where would you recommend they search or go to?
So you can find us on our website. So that's www.acrosstheborder.org.
And then yeah, our Instagram is at acrosstheborder.uk, and then on the Instagram we have a link tree, and then on the link tree also has our websites, any upcoming events that we have. So probably the most inclusive place I would say is the Instagram, and then from the Instagram you can go on our website and then our LinkedIn, and then yeah, and just have a look at what we do. And then if you want to message us, you can email us at info@acrosstheborder.org.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ladies, before you go, there's a game that I like to play with my guests. where I just ask some fun rapid questions so the listeners can get to know you better. So my first one for you is, what is your favorite season? Meyys, you can go first.
My favorite season is winter.
Mine too.
That is so funny because I literally was about to say, Mawada, what is yours? But thank you for jumping in. Next one is, what is your favorite quote? Anyone can go first.
My favorite quote at the moment is by a lovely British Somali poet, Warsan Shir. And she says, "We cross borders in search of a better life, but we carry our history with us, stitched into the fabric of our being."
And Meyys, what would your favorite quote be?
Mine would be by Maya Angelou when she said, "You are only free when you realize you belong no place, you belong every place, no place at all. The price is high, the rewards is great."
Powerful quotes, ladies. Yeah, I love them. My next question for you is, if you could work anywhere remotely, where would it be and why?
For me personally, I would love to go and work for a couple of years in Italy. And that would be because of the weather, the food, and obviously the scenery.
I would love to work in Qatar for a few years, mainly because there's so many great opportunities there, and I've heard so many nice things about it. And I also have friends and family that live there, and they report amazing stuff. So it would be great.
And my last question for you, ladies, is, if you weren't a part of Across the Border, what could you see yourself doing?
Personally, if I was not part of Across the Border, I would probably be working towards or working with a big NGO like the UN or the Red Cross. Yeah.
I would either be doing my master's or interning or possibly working for a huge humanitarian organization as well.
Ladies, I just pray for just nothing but success, and continual just resources and funding and everything that you need to take your organization, your company to higher heights and to change the world. As you said, Across the Border, when you hear that name, for me, it just sounds like there isn't any kind of like limitations on how far it can go and what you ladies can do. So I'm looking forward to seeing just more events, more life-changing events, more just everything that the world needs, to be honest. So thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been your host, Calvin Anderson, for the Checking With podcast. We have had the phenomenal organization Across the Border today. We've had Mawada, Mohamed, and we had Meyys, Hussein. I know they had a third member who couldn't make it, but we just send our love to her also. Have a lovely weekend. Take care. Speak soon. God bless.